Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fialka. Today is April 8th, 2025. Want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast, I'm Probably Wrong About Everything. Please subscribe. It's an honor and a pleasure today to be here with Laetitia Barbier. Is that, how do you pronounce it?
In English, I will pronounce it. In American, I will pronounce it Laetitia Barbier. But my name is Laetitia Barbier because I'm
Okay,
French.
thank you. Laetitia, where are you calling in from?
Well, I live in Brooklyn. I'm in New York right now, and it's been my home for 14 years. And but originally, I came from Paris. I'm a Parisian. So
The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
love. Isn't like the question everyone answered the same? I mean, like the best thing for human beings is love. I mean, I don't know.
That's beautiful. That's the answer I get the most.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
That's a really interesting question. I think that for a reason that is, I'm a very visual person, but I think that visual is for me has a very strong spiritual component, because it is like emotional. And so I will say that for information, I will say the radio sound. I just like once the images are removed and I can listen to the human voice, and then whatever I used to enjoy like radio plays and all these like very interesting experimental radio shows from the 70s in France. I think this is like there's something, it leaves room for the imagination, and then for some reason it creates this this perfect reservoir. It's like it has a nice kind of slightly passive thing you want to be able to absorb, be receptive, and then it's just that's for me radio
I
sound.
love it. I am a radio person all the way, and I appreciate that. You're really concise and articulate. I appreciate it. Then why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Oh, because we're well, this is very interesting. Like it plays a little bit with the what I do. Like this is the it plays with the tarot. I think we have like we function under very specific human impulses. Tarot is linking two of them, making stories and finding meaning out of things that are not supposed to make meaning. I think that an impulse that is not necessarily in the tarot, but it is a problem that a lot of tarot readers struggle with, which is the collecting information and knowledge, is because like I think that we're I don't know how to explain it. I think it's just that we have this connection to accumulation. I think that the idea that like just understanding the past and understanding the future, trying to connect all the dots in this kind of like large nexus of things, it's a profound human impulse. uh, I know that I've been trying to detach myself from collecting and archiving, whether it is knowledge or items, because I do believe that it's easier, especially for the work I do. I like the idea that I can find the answer from within. So it's not necessarily finding, like a place outside in a world where that answer might be right. If someone else says it, it might be right. I'm just more interested in trying to figure out how it resonates right to me. And so less about archiving and collecting and more about like archaeological find within yourself.
Wow, that's heavy because we're going to get into archiving, but I have to follow up.
Yes.
Is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
I don't think it's like it functions under in that binary. I think, I mean, it's just animals do it. Animals do it. Magpie do it. I mean, we love ravens because they're smart like us, but they also like shiny stuff and pile them up, and they give them away too to us to please us because they know we're wired the same. So I think it's neither or. I think it's just a matter of sensibility. And for me, it is about like so maybe okay. Let's just get a little conceptual. I think that it's about an awareness of time passing, what needs to be preserved, what needs to be transmitted, what would matter to other generation to be kept after I can't pass away. Like I think that in a way, scholars do the same with knowledge. They try to articulate it according to the way their brain function.
Yeah.
So that way of understanding the world can be passed on if necessary, to whoever would need it later on. So I think it's just I think that collecting, archiving is just an awareness of time passing, and what the urgency of your own mortality, and how knowledge is eternal in its own way.
Well, I'm going to shoot. That was really good, because I'm going to shoot the archive question in right now, because it feels so appropriate. I usually wait till later, but here's basically, I'm going to set it up. It's a long setup. Sorry. The word archive etymologically comes from 1400s, to keep safe, free from harm. But 200 years later, in 1600s, it was what we know as archiving now, record preserved as evidence. But Charles Baudelaire said, if you try to make a statement long, deep, and rich, it will age very fast. If you try to own the day you're talking, it will last forever. So we who study Eastern philosophy, Ram Dass says, live, be here now, live in the moment. Wyndham Lewis says, artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. So why do we have to save all this crap if the whole point of life is to live in the moment? But now I'm for it. I go to a library every day. I love, what you say, archives, which we think like book fairs, like you do, studying the history of art. And, the people in Egypt kept things in their coffin with them. So basically, the two questions are, is this need or want to archive more innate or more invented? And do you have plans for your own archive?
Okay, so I'll try. I'm gonna try to answer things in a chapter way, and you tell me if I'm rambling, because I'm very
let me make it clear. I'm for rambling, anecdotes, stories, tangents, and you don't have to answer the question. So wherever you go is fine.
Well, sure. I think I think that like when I think about archive, the first thing that I'm thinking of is like museums and libraries. If we think of museum and libraries, in the scale of humanity, there are new technologies, like the museum as we know it, this place that shows art from different stratas of civilization that we go to, we pay a fee, and we get edified. This is like, basically like 200 years, 300 years, and it evolved from, curiosity cabinet and private collections that were only for the wealthiest. So this idea that we're saving things in order to preserve and potentially write the history of the world is fairly, it's fairly recent. People didn't preoccupy themselves with this 200 years ago. So I will say that the way what we archive might be more interesting. Like we believe that archiving, like certain things will just allow us to write a narrative. Now we understand, like it's just interesting to see. But I'm not a librarian. But I do frequent a lot of like book nerds and librarian, and it's just interesting to see, like the incentive that people culturally are doing. For example, in France, like France has that place for the past, I think, 20 years called the Fanzinothèque. It's a library of fanzines, of French fanzines, and it's basically trying for the past 20 years to regroup fanzines and amateur self-published ephemeral books from people from basically the 60s on, because that culture matters now, because that culture was culture already, but we never thought it would be, like something that people were given. I was just thinking about, the other day I was thinking, or actually, I guess yesterday, I was in London yesterday, and I went to see this great exhibition on the performer and fashion icon Leigh Bowery. Was this very extravagant, like human sculpture performance performer person, and it was so interesting to see all those memorabilia from the club, like the flyers from Taboo and all this stuff that were just they were never meant to be kept. They were just like little piece of like 80s, 90s stuff that were just there to promote a party, and here they are in a museum. And I was just thinking about this. I'm thinking about the fact that archiving is important. Archiving is important because the moment we do it, we try to save from oblivion a piece of history. And I believe that every layers of history, whether it is personal, like highbrow, lowbrow, deserve to be archived. But it's very, it's very hard. So in a way, thank God, some people just take that upon themselves to just say like that history I was part of mattered. I remember there is this, I can't remember her name, but there was this story of this Black woman who recorded TV every day.
Every VHS. She had a million VHS. Yeah.
Exactly. And now people are just like, this is a mind gold because none of this has been archived. During all those like magnetic tape stuff, people are just like, yeah, whatever. This is like we're doing advertisement. No one wants, like I remember like early episodes of Doctor Who were kind of like taped over, and all the Doctor Who people are like, what the fuck, BBC?
Well, it's also Anais Nin did so many journals. She's like the person who did the most journals in the history of the world. Then people say, well, she wasn't really a great writer. But out of that huge amount of journaling, there's great moments when you compare it to other literature. But the fact that she did it, and we have that preservation. But do you have plans for your own archive?
No. I don't. So this is the thing. I don't know Eastern philosophy very well, but I'm just completely caricaturing the things. Like I'm very, part of what I'm interested in doing in my life is I'm very self-aware of my own death. I just think about death all the time in a very good way. I'm not necessarily sad or scared of it. And I also know that, and this is something that I'm just very self-aware, like I'm knowledgeable about all sorts of stuff. I'm not the most knowledgeable, but I'm also not the least knowledgeable. I also know that the knowledge I have, I can use it, share it, theorize around it for my time being. And then what else? I'm going to die, like I wrote a book. Is my book going to be published after my death? I don't think so. Like I'm only capable to like scope knowledge as long as I'm alive. I'm excited to be able to do this, but then after that, every day, I found my humility, remembering that like once I'm dead, people who are interested in tarot or art history or all sorts of stuff are just going to be using my material, and I want to have, there is no need for me to own it. So I have my whole thing planned. I'm not going to archive anything. I like the idea of ephemeral stuff. All my book will go for sale. I think I'm probably going to give all the money from my estate to a charity. I don't think that I want to, like a Laetitia Barbier institute of any kind, I just, like I'll rather, this is the thing too. Like I read tarot. Tarot is an ephemeral live practice, I'm not recording sometimes people want to record the reading, but that's about them. It's not about me. The work in nature I'm doing is ephemeral. So it's not supposed to be, theater for one, it's supposed to be something that is evolve in the moment. So like if I want to be zero debris at the end, and just leave naked. That's my goal.
It's beautiful. It's so well put. And I wanted to go back again. It's off script, but you're flowing into these really important questions that I love to bring up later. But I have to bring this one up now because Hollis Frampton's a great experimental filmmaker. He says narrative is born out of the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die.
Yeah.
That's his thought on narrative, storytelling you brought up. My follow-up question to that is, can you forget to die?
I don't know if you can forget to die, but I will just say this, it's like it's stupid and maybe silly and maybe depressing, or not. But like I I've contemplated suicide out of curiosity, just because I really want to know.
Yeah.
I just really want to know. So I'm just thinking, like there is this thing. She's like, I don't know what's there. I don't know the afterlife, but sometimes I think it's just like it's just I can't fathom not knowing and having to wait. So I want to leave old and then be like an old lady and enjoy like all
Yeah.
the strangeness of like because I think life is fucking awesome. But I've considered uh killing myself just so I can end the suspense. I don't think I think most people are forgetting that they will die. Like it's talking about uh, necroamnesia. People just forget. People just don't see themselves
Yeah.
aging. They don't see themselves. Like they like that thing of legacy. Is just very interesting. I was just gonna say like not to kind of turn the question on you, but like you worked on the archive of Frank Zappa, is that right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, of course, like you got to archive one of the greatest musical brain of all time. Like I was just like, I'm not gonna like compared to like Frank Zappa. I'm no one. I'm not producing anything. So anyway, I
Well,
just
one thing, I'm glad you brought it up, because one thing Frank said, he archived all his stuff religiously because he was using it to make his music then.
yeah yeah
And so he said, I don't care about legacy. He made a point of saying that. So that's a big subject that we could talk about forever, because he made 60 albums in 30 years, and since he died they've put out 100 albums. I don't like that idea, but I like that my friends will hear them and tell me this is great, or Frank would have never released that. He would have never put that out. He had standards. So it is a heavy thing, because when I asked, can you forget to die? It evoked two more things. One is, people don't know if I'm asking that literally or metaphorically. So when I say at the beginning, put the questions into the context you
yeah
want, some people go, can you forget to die? And they go, yes. And they use it as a joyous thing that
yeah
they're going to keep living. And you took it in another way, and that was good, because Camus or Sartre, one of them, is quoted by Alan Watts all the time saying that's the major issue for all humans,
uh-huh
whether to commit suicide or not.
yeah
They just lay it out like that's the existential question, whether you do that or not. But you said a line you shot in so fast that I love. You go, but I think living is so awesome. It's so fucking awesome, because you're not the suicidal type. In fact, to go back to Frank Zappa, he wrote a song called Suicide Chump. And it's a heavy song, because it's basically, if you're going to be my friend and come up to me and go, oh, I'm going to commit suicide, then go get help or ask me for help or let's talk about it. Then if you're not, then go fucking do it. Quit saying you're going to do it if you're not. So that's like dangerous when you're a satirist, as Frank was,
I
because
know.
people are saying, are you encouraging suicide? You always have to have that little thing at the end, like, here's the suicide hotline,
Yeah.
like, Laetitia, let me give you that now because you said that. Like, it's amazing, because what you are, in my opinion, is a comprehensivist. You're looking for the big picture. You have your biases and your opinions. So here's the next question. Do thoughts create emotions?
Yes, but I mean, yes, I also think that emotion, well, like they do create emotion. I think emotion distort thoughts. I think that again, like I don't think that's the only thing that like moves within us, but the interplay of both of them is just really, really fascinating. I like the idea that personally, I like the idea that I mean, I don't know actually. What should I say? I think that I've seen myself being more emotional than in the mind, and I know that a lot of the way I live my life is not necessarily through rational means, and sometimes evocation of emotional means. I think that's problematic for a lot of people because
Yeah.
because it's a very but I I enjoy thinking. I think thinking is, like again, like extending temporality. Like just I love, like the well, the idea of the philosophical doubt. Like just kind of like like
Yeah.
going down with a question and then trying to figure out answers for it through conversation by connecting the dots. And so like here we have this kind of like process that is just like never ending, and the emotion is like direct. I think that I want to be able to exist in both. I think that because I'm an adult child type, I just more emotions are more exciting, and I quest for them. This is why I love music. I will
Yeah.
always I love to read, but I prefer listening to records and going to concert. I'm not gonna lie. And there is something, like I love. I believe that like cinema is a controversial idea. I have this conversation all the time with my friend. We go into huge heated debate. I think that so I enjoy reading. I read mostly fiction and theory books and stuff like that. But once in a while I will read, like novels. I think, but I do watch films all the time, and I believe that, again, strong opinion, and I'm not trying to be right or convince anyone. I think that for me, at least, cinema is a better narrative form than a novel, and then because of that multisensory experience, I think that it triggers, like simultaneously. It's like a Christmas lights in my brain. Like just the music, like becomes this like just very convoluted, complex emotional experience that I can't necessarily understand and rationalize. And I feel like I do respond more to I want to I don't know how I want to call them, like I guess right brain side
Wow.
sensory experience than left brain, and not that, but I think that sometimes like you were talking about Camus or Sartre, like this is
Yeah.
very brain literature to me. There's some
That's you have ESP because about 30 seconds ago, I was going to bring up left brain, right brain, because we study that a lot, and linear left brain, right brain. But here's the next, because you anticipate a lot where we're going. I'm glad you told me about film. I'll insert this really quick. Kenneth Anger.
Oh, I know. Are you kidding?
Yeah,
I
okay.
wrote my dissertation on Kenneth Anger.
Oh, yeah. I love his line. He says, "The day cinema was born was a black day for humankind." And your thing about cinema is a better narrative than novels. That's all brilliant, juicy stuff for us to talk about. Here's the next question. And thank you once again. You really get what I'm after. We're here to have fun, and I'm really learning a lot. Fill in the blank. I don't know what I think until I.
No, I get it. Like, I have to think so deep on this one. I don't want to like this. Maybe I just want to. Maybe I just want to extend those dots until. I don't know. I'd love to extend the dots. I'm an intuitive person, so if I don't know what I think, I don't have an answer, and it's like the Super 8 ball. I'll ask later.
Yeah.
And so, like, this is the thing. It's just like I want to, like I do that with like anything. Like some people ask me often my opinion about like, have you seen this exhibition? Have you seen this movie? Have you seen this book? What's your critical?
Yeah.
And so when it's too fresh, maybe when I'm too much in the emotion, I won't be
Yeah.
able to just give you a sharp, and so I'll just sleep. I'll sleep on it like maybe 1 or 2 nights, and then at some point the dust will settle, and I'll know exactly when I know what I think. I know I'm a fairly opinionated person, so it tends to come after a couple of days. But I like the idea, and I love the idea of not filling the blank, and then being in that ambiguity until you kind of like just slowly come out of it. Like I love the idea of not. This is very Lynchian. I love David Lynch so much because what do I think of this film? Like
Yeah.
they just there are so many things at once. Like what do they mean? Well, I've rewatched, since he died, like I rewatched a bunch of them. I've seen them many, many times, but like now I see them differently. I think about them differently.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because like he taught us that sometimes the blank is a nice place to be in, it's like a company.
So well put, because there's a couple things. I don't know what I think until I ... extend the dots. I've never had that answer, and I love it. McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Mm-hmm.
But you also filled those after the dots. You said, until I ask later, or till I sleep on it, or, you sort of left it unanswered. That's John Cage. When they asked him a question, he would go, that's a very good question. I wouldn't want to ruin it with an answer.
Yes. I was just you gotta love the guy too. Like I mean, like he's a genius. I really enjoy John Cage and all this like experimental music stuff. But like just exactly why would you? Sometimes like this is the thing is like filling the void. This is the we were talking a little bit about like collecting as well.
Yeah.
Like collectors enjoy like filling the void. There is always like a collection comes to like maybe come to replace something that has been missing inside or something. And I just like, I think part of like I read cards, so like technically I'm like I see myself as like a folk healer. I'm not a psychoanalyst nor like a physician, but I just do something that help people grow and help them pay attention, and sometimes I give them the tools so they can just like fish, so to speak. But where was I going with that? Well, the idea, I think that like part of what I'm trying to teach sometimes is like it's like learning to live in that void a little bit. Like what if you were not to just kind of like fill it up with something just to kind of like for this false feeling of security. I like John I like the 3 minutes. How do you say 3 minutes 40?
4 minutes and 33 seconds. Yeah.
4 minutes 33. It's just like what a great thing. It's just like like he's a master of the void. Like of course he doesn't. He's gonna answer your question. Like he's just letting you appreciate. Like the gray soundtrack of urban life as like a piano piece. Like
that's what McLuhan called it. The gap is where the action is, or really the best way is the resonating interval, the in-betweenness.
Yeah.
So the next question is, can humans think without language?
Well, okay, I'm just gonna take a different route here. Yeah, I mean, like maybe not human, but like I think that okay, like if I just like do animals have languages? They do to some extent, like it don't qualify for our idea of language as in the sense that animals are not necessarily capable of writing their story, although they do. Some of them have funerary rites. They know they have this kind of continuation of like burying their dead or like visiting the grave, the skeletons and stuff, like elephant. I was thinking about that, but they do have language, and they have like modalities of communication, and so it just depends on what we mean exactly by language. Like that, like it's just like, sorry, I'm just thinking about all this weird stuff, but like when it's late at night and I just really want to kind of like fuck around, I watch all these like animal documentary videos on YouTube, and one of the things I love is like bird mating dance. I just like, this is like animals burlesque show, they just extend their wing and it's crazy, and they do all these like super crazy choreography. I'm just like, it works on me, I'm seduced. I'm seduced by this. And so I was just thinking, like the this is a language. Bees have a language. They don't use it the same way. They don't use it to write epics or create narratives that are sacred fiction. But like, what do we know about this? Maybe they do. And so
Yeah.
I was just thinking that we have an understanding of, like, we have a limited understanding of what language is, and it applies to verbality. Just like civilizations start when we start to write books, like the cuneiform emperor. Okay, like now we can translate it, so we know they exist, they have a consciousness because they wrote a bunch of stuff. But like people used to still have like their orality is lost. We can archive it, but I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to this, but
No,
like,
that was really good because it leads to this. Chomsky said, language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is.
yeah,
What,
exactly.
what do you do? What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
But that's the thing, is like, I love to, by the way, I love talking about language because like, it's just I don't necessarily find myself very articulate as a person. And one of the thing that is very funny too is that, like, English is my second language. So I I've spoke English every day for the past. I've lived in New York for 14 years, and before that I was in Germany, so I was still speaking English a lot. But I left. I was like, maybe for the last 17 years or something like that, maybe a little more. Um, and so there is when you start speaking your mother language every day, and then you replace it to a different language, like, you start having weird dreams in English, and when you're and then so your thought process start to develop in a different language too. And there is all this kind of schizophrenic experience you have with language. And I just, like, and I can say, like, language fails me all the time. Now I'm like, I'm good in English, but I'm not. My English will always be the English of a foreigner. Will always have an accent. It always be creative, in English in ways that are kind of like don't make sense. I'm an editor nightmare, basically. But there is the thing is, like, I also don't speak French anymore, so I'm losing my native tongue. And I used to be very eloquent in French. And when I go back to France, I can't, I wouldn't be able to write a book in French, for example. I'll only be able to write in English. And so throughout the years, I have to kind of like figure out other modalities of language that I was either able to read or either able to express myself with. And I don't consider myself an artist, or I do with the tarot, but like, I'm not a visual artist. And then, like, I felt very, very specifically a need to create images to articulate stuff that wouldn't come out on a verbal form. And I think it's just like, it felt very liberating. It's not something that is supposed to be shared with the public or anything, with like collages, drawings and stuff. I felt it. Now I worked with a visual medium, which I read the tarot is an alphabet in a weird way. I felt compelled to just explore other ways of expressing, and visual and color became like something very important because it just like transcended the boundaries that I felt stuck with verb wise.
Well, Letitia, your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
It's just, that's the thing, is like it depends. I know a lot of thinkers. I know a lot of feelers. I know a lot of people who have like very practical, like intelligence. I know a lot of people who have like very dynamic way of being in the world. I think that I just don't like, it will be just so sad if we were just like split in two, like, I
Yeah.
think that we're both, I feel like I wish people were. I think like one thing that I know from reading cards is that I feel like people should learn how to think their feelings.
Yeah, that's good.
Like, just like feel themselves, and then try to pinpoint. Like the way I see it, it's almost like when you put a needle on the record, like you
Yeah.
just put the thing in, and that's the right song vibrate, and then you hear the sound, the lyrics, the instruments and stuff. I feel like people are like have been so preoccupied, about like being a thinker or expressing themselves in certain ways, that they are not in tune necessarily with their feeling, and so they believe falsely that they don't have intuition, that they
Yeah.
can't foreknow. If they were to listen, if they were capable to read their emotion the same way they read an article,
Yeah.
they'd be able to navigate themselves with a lot more autonomy. And
That's really good because we invented the word thinking and feeling. So we think we can separate them, but we can't. They're like this. And Bridget Bardot said, when I make love, I don't think. And I'm like, good luck. How do you turn your brain off? Like people who meditate go, okay, now think about not thinking. And there's a bumper sticker on a car in my street and it says, don't believe everything you think. And I go, well, you could say, don't believe everything you feel. So here's,
both of them, like it's just like we are our own tricksters, Jerry. We're our
yeah,
own.
that's it.
This is the thing. It's like, like discernment is about this. Like knowing that like feelings are not facts. That is that you feel strongly, but and then like it's just like, makes your body sweaty, and then there is all this stuff, but like it doesn't need that necessarily. You need to act on things, and then
Right.
like how many people do I have a lot of New York friends, so like people, New Yorkers are black belts in overthinking. Like they're thinking
Overthink. Yeah.
that it's almost like they put themselves under like this kind of like self-hypnosis.
Yeah.
Like it's just that they can't even perceive the reality, and we all I overthink often too. Like I'm a New Yorker now, I guess, but it's just like like when you're
Yeah.
so much in your mind that it just blind your senses. You can't even see in front of you anymore. Like you dissociate because like the thinking process is taking the like steering wheel.
Steering
And
wheel. Exactly.
so I think it's just about regulation, like if
Yeah.
the thinking, feeling, it's both the poison, like both of them are the poison and the remedy, like we just
And
like,
the remedy. Really good. So
yeah.
here's two questions from the 50s. Alan Turing. He asked,
Oh, yeah.
is thinking a function of the soul?
If Alan Turing says it, yes.
Yeah.
Because like the level of genius and being able, like, for me, Alan Turing is like a, and great scientists will not, like I don't know about their emotional fields, but great scientists, people who are able to kind of like see between the lines of the world. It's almost like I don't know if God exists. I do have faith though, and I do, like have an understanding of the divine, but I just don't know if that's the right one or the correct one. I do believe though there is people walking this earth that can just perceive the sacred coding of the machine. There is this very kind of like 17th century way of in France they used to call God the great clockman. Which is so funny because it's like, clocks were a big deal at the time, automaton technology, and so God was seen as this kind of like guy who just kind of like created all the little nuts and bolts of the mechanics of the world. And so some people, Alan Turing, like he's one of those people. Like I think in this case, like thinking was just activating, that link that connects us to maybe a divine force. Like he was able to see in reality some kind of divine blueprint, and that's why he managed to create all this stuff. And I think that some of the greatest geniuses are able to do this. Einstein, Tesla, those guys, they were able to do it. They were.
Really well put. That was beautiful. You brought both of those two up too. Here's the second Turing question. Can machines think?
Well, technically now they can, technically now they can. I don't know. I will say this. I think they can, they are proving, they can think, like the artificial intelligence can think. It cannot feel, but it can think.
Yeah.
Does that makes them human? No, not
No.
entirely. And then you can see, what's problematic is like if machine, like, I guess it's like a stupid opinion, and I'm sure people, but people should not rely on machine to think.
No.
People should learn to think for themselves, and having a critical sense is so hard. I remember this is one of our teacher told us when I was in France. Like I was like maybe like 12 or 13, and one of our teacher was like kind of like spontaneously animated that day. It was like like you're not going to school just to learn how to do like addition and all that stuff. Like, you're going to school so we can teach you critical sense. Like it's not about like us being right and telling you what's right. It's about like you finding out what's not right for you, and then why you should not go in this direction and that direction. So like I found it such an amazing statement. It's like the teacher was telling us like the whole point of school is to teach you when it's the right time to disobey. To just like understand where like that thinking process doesn't make sense to you because it maybe breaches some of your moral line or some of your ethical concern or some different stuff. So I think that machine, like we can teach machinery how to think. That's great. Like they will probably think like a very specific strata of population, but the moment we rely on them to think, we're not human ourselves.
Yeah.
We lose the soul. We lose the soulfulness.
You connected the two questions. You're a good listener. Thank you. So, do you more pursue meaning or more pursue happiness?
Yeah, meaning. Yeah, meaning. Happiness is great. Happiness is like, it's that this thing that you get. Happiness feels like an emotion.
Yeah.
Happiness is an emotion. It's like the experience of beauty. People are like, "What is beauty?" It's like, well, I think beauty. I'm pretty sure I'm not the first one saying that, but like all that stuff, happiness, beauty, like those are all part of an emotional field. You get to experience them, and if you don't seize them when they're there, they vanish and you're gone. But like the reality is the meaning sometimes is tragic, but it feels like everyone had this thing where like you break up with like your partner and then you're sad and you listen to all those records, and then those record I'm just some like at some point in the 2000 and something, I broke up, and I was just really, I went into this like Jeff Buckley deep dive. I will listen, and it was just and it like that record nursed Grace, it nursed me to life. Not because it made me happy,
Yeah.
but because it gave my sadness meaning.
Yeah, that is so good, because I got it from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he says just what you said. You predicted by punchline. Meaning tends to last. Happiness doesn't necessarily last.
Yeah.
So does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Oh, I think we're creating it. I
Yeah.
think, I think we're creating it. I mean, like, I don't, I think this, okay. Like, I feel like it's like, this is what I believe, like I believe that we live in, you remember that movie? I mean, I think it was a book too. It's a Japanese film, Rashomon.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
One story, but it's seen through three different protagonists, and it's the same story, but every time you learn something else. We are living in like, like that, for me, that idea of consciousness, it is like our little Rashomon fantasy, like just like we oscillate between different versions of ourselves, and they're all perceiving different things, and we're creating this, but it doesn't mean we're right.
Oh yeah.
You're right. It means that we're, like this is something. I don't know. Like I'm not very deep about that stuff, but like, of course, we're creating our reality. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And then again, if you write about your own experience, like a nice journal, like personally, I think she's an amazing writer, and I just like, maybe they're like not so well written because they were not meant to be read as like some kind of that was supposed to be public. But if it wasn't for her, like she really like got me out of like, she talking about the meaning, she gave me a lot of meaning to chew on.
That's it. That's the beauty. Yeah.
But one of the things so interesting in when you write your own story, and you write your reflection on a page all the time. Well, like you look at the journals that you wrote like 10 years ago, and then you perceive part of the creation of your own reality. You're like, oh shit, I used to have those fears. I used to have like all those like stuff in my mind. I like, if I had like seized whatever I had at that point, I would have been so much happy. But like, I formatted myself to just see things from like a gray lens, or not like a satisfying lens. And I feel like it's truly true. We create, we create our own prison cells sometime. I believe that.
Yeah. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
I think, okay, so I will just like, I think, okay, I'll just like do it like a pirouette. I think light speed, intuitive speed is the same, like pace.
Speed. Yeah.
Thinking is like it's like soft and slow process, and I don't think, like, even if you think hard, you can't find the solution, the right idea. But I think that intuition is that thing that comes, and then just like we don't know, and then we know. And
Yeah.
then not only we know, but like there is this confidence that's just like, this is this kind of like direct alignment, like it's like intuition is, like it's a form of reasoning that doesn't involve thinking process. It's like it
That's
doesn't.
good.
Yeah.
That's good. Audre Lorde, the poet, said, "You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools."
Yeah.
Her colleague Yvonne Rayner said, "Oh, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?"
I don't know. I mean, I'm just gonna let me just. This is the moment where I'm gonna just like sound like slightly spectrum. Which is like, just I don't understand. I don't understand this. So like basically, let me just. Can you repeat this so I can just like.
Let me tell you, the some of these questions I put cue quotes before them. The basic question is, what tool do you most gravitate towards? You can add the word new if you want, and then set it up with Audre Lorde's quote is, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools.
I
So
think
you can apply that if you want, but it's basically, what tool do you most gravitate towards? And the word tool implies tangible. It doesn't have to be tangible. It can be non-tangible or tangible.
I think that the especially now, like that. I don't want to get too political, but the tool that to dismantle the house is empathy. Like that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Seems to be like so upsetting to some people. I think that the moment you put, like there is this expression in English that I love, because there is no equivalent really in French, without walk a mile in my shoe. Walk
Yeah.
a mile in my shoe. Well, if you're capable of walking a mile in other people's shoe,
Yeah.
like you just don't want to, like you want to, maybe you'll just like design the house in a different way, with
Yeah.
more courtyard for, like casual social interaction and less walls.
That's
It's
really good what you just said. That's amazing. So the follow-up question is, what new toy do you suggest, or what toy do you gravitate towards?
I was just, like the eternal toy for me is the tarot. I think
Tarot.
tarot
Yeah.
is like, the eternal toy, because tarot is so great. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a miniature museum of great,
Yeah.
profound images. It's something you can do on your own. It's something that you can do with others. Something that can be playful and fun. Something that can teach you big lesson in very little,
Yeah.
time. It's something that you can take seriously one day and also not take seriously. It's an object of communion. Like I think it's a great binder. It creates social, like any game. It creates social bonds. It create like different ways to dialogue. It's great to prompt conversation. And I just said that's the tool that never ceased to get fun. Like it's just like I remember reading this book. What was the it's I can't remember the name of the writer, but the book was called Homo Ludens. Homo Ludens, like almost like Homo erectus, the walking man, like it's the playing man. And the guy was talking about it in the intro. He said that, like there is this word in English, fun, fun, fun. The fun word, the word fun is so fun, and it's a word that doesn't really echo in any other language. It has this kind of ability to describe exactly the feeling of fun in its own sonority. And it's something everyone, there's something so simple and not, like it's not about sophistication when it's fun. And I think, like a toy has to be fun. Tarot never ceases to be fun. It's something it has the simplicity that all great complexity come from. It's just tarot is the
Beautiful.
best toy.
Two things you evoked really good is one of the genres I'm most fond of in music is funk. And I go, funky is fun is the key. It's in the word funky. Fun is the key. And then
I love
right.
this.
And
Okay.
that's what my in 40 years of interviewing people, over 1,000 people, I've never interviewed someone in tarot cards. So it was like, you're the first, and you're promoting what I'm all about, is language and fun and having conversations. So what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Um Injustice.
Yeah.
Injustice. And I think, like what I'm worried about, and is like, talking about language and all that stuff, just like people not having the ability to use their voice. That's what keeps me up at night. And
Yeah.
obviously I'm not, I'm a tarot reader, so I know my place. But like, I think that I do believe that tarot is is a great, like political tool as well, because it allows people to just revoice themselves in a way,
Yeah.
by being able to just kind of like find the language to express, like what, like the different stratas of who they are and how they feel about it. And
Yeah.
and so that's the thing that keeps me up at night.
I
But
love So you put the letters RE before voice, revoice. Is that
yeah,
what you just said?
revoice, voices, revoicing, voice, voicing back.
No, it's
Finding your
really
voice.
good. I
Yeah,
love that word. I'm writing an article right now on idiots and name calling, and how it's stupid to be a name caller. Name calling doesn't work, but there's a lot in the word idiot. And I'm going to use that word revoice, because that's what we need to do, is revoice. Don't repeat these cliche insults. That's not going to get you anywhere. You gotta use your other tool that you emphasize, is empathy.
as a French person, I love that Americans says like, "Oh, pardon my French," because I love the idea that us French people are, like the key holder of vulgarity and then insults making. But it's true, a lot of Latin country have a, and Spain is like that too. Like I mean, I don't know Italian, so I can't
Yeah,
really know. But like in English and in French and in Spanish, like people take such great care of creating imaginative insults.
yeah.
And I have a we do have a lot of respect in the craft for this.
No, the black culture in America has it too. It's called calling the dozens.
Yeah,
It's like, we got, I'll cut you down so low you can't parachute off a dime. I mean, those are really amazing, playful.
yeah,
Yeah. So here's what Marshall McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, that artists are the antenna of the race. They're
yeah.
broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So
Yeah.
we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So
Yeah.
I ask you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
So this is the, I mean, I like, if I understand the question well, I think that I think it's just a matter of accessibility. I think when you say we, like a lot of people don't have access to books, to
Yeah,
understand the pleasure of reading. A lot of people don't necessarily, watch stuff that are like titillating their, and so they will just, so it's just like I remember seeing the thing the other day. There is this black artist who basically decided to start to do a tour of the Met, and he was bringing, like black kids to the Met, and he's like, yeah, of course I'm going to do that, because I know that unless a black person bring them to the Met, they'll never understand that the Met is for them too. And I was just,
yeah,
it really, like moved me, this. And it's it's true, like there is entire areas of culture that are, that feel that are completely, like the people with those, and we don't understand that if the people with those antennas over there are going to touch us, because
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like it's for us. And I feel like, um, I like the idea that, that well, I think there was the utopia of the internet, like now everyone can become a creator, and it's true, like everyone can become a creator, everyone can become the antenna for a community of their peer that might just be, enlightened by it, without necessarily having a record company to sign your music deal, or like a publisher that publish your book. There
Yeah.
is a little, still, to this day, there is a lot of like, interesting, I wouldn't call that pirate culture that
Love it.
offers,
Yeah.
many antennas. I hope people find their own, something that resonate with them.
That is so well put. So, do artists have moral obligation?
Yes, absolutely. I think that the moment you are, you have visibility, uh you have a responsibility toward that visibility.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that it will probably get me into a fight a bunch, but like I truly believe this, yes, especially in, like complicated political climate. I feel like, like that you have to just be sensitive to, like what's happening around you.
Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I'm more afraid of old ideas being microwaved as new.
Yeah. You are a wordsmith. That is microwaved. I loved your other line that you're really good with words. Okay, can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
Yeah, I have I mean, I mean, like it's completely random and not very interesting, but my first memory I've ever had was when I got, I can't remember, the tonsils
Yeah.
removed. It was like 3 or 4, and so I remember going to the hospital with my mom. I remember the teddy bear which I had was blue and velvety and a little flat. And I remember being in the operation room and then seeing all those people that were just like really bizarrely dressed. I had never seen that before. Woohoo. And then they put this big thing on my nose, and then I don't remember anything. So like I think it's just, I I know myself pretty well now. I have very strong emotional memory. So if something moves me, I will remember it like just like a film, but a bunch of film cell. So I think I picked up on my mom's stress. I was stressed. I just didn't understand anything, and then like all those surgeons were stressed. So that's my first.
Well,
My first.
here's the follow-up. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Oh, like everyone is watching Severance these days. Of course, it's a memory is a blessing. Of course, they're like, if we don't remember, oh my god, what a nightmare! Like having no memories, like such a dystopian. Like I did rewatch a couple of those great movie, with my friend, like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and all
Yeah.
those movies that, basically, in which science promises us that we're going to be able to forget the things that we don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
Just fucking tragic. So of course, memory, even tragic ones, are blessings.
Tell me someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, just briefly, and what specifically was that impact?
Hmm. So I don't. Okay, I'm gonna. I've talked about that story a little bit, and I don't know. Like I don't know. Like the thing is, like the family is always an interesting topic for me, because I was adopted, so I have a family. I have parents, but I come from, like my parents don't look like me. My brother doesn't look like me, and but like they are my parents. But like I said, on my mom's side, they had bumper cars, and I have I've always been very intrigued by the that side of the family, because I just wonder like what makes it. But they had bumper cars for like basically since the turn of the 20th century apparently, or like they were in the kind of the carnival circle. And my mom has all these like stories about like the very old timey stuff. But like I was just wondering, like, how do you become that? How do you to become that? There must be like such a desire to be some kind of free form human being,
Yeah.
just kind of like there's such an anarchist fiber into this. And so without naming a person in particular, I think that thing, that line of the family, like chose, it's something that I feel like I'm really inspired by. And I do, like you're a spiritual person, you're also a Californian. So I talked about that many years ago to this great magician named Julian Vane. He has this little series of podcast, like YouTube series where he asks you, "What is your magical thing?" And so I have this cross, this jewelry cross that was given to me by my mother when my grandmother passed away, and I really believed, that, well, that object changed my life, but I believe that it also conjured a lot of those like ancestry stuff. I never thought like ancestral worship would be for me because I'm adopted, so I don't have any link bloodline connection. But after that I was just like there's something that they want me to continue, and
Yeah.
maybe the cross is this. And now, like, as like this like tarot reader person who goes from town to town to teach tarot. I'm not far away from the bumper cars. I'm not.
That's amazing. It is very similar. So the same question outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, and what was the impact?
I will say it is just because it was the anniversary of her passing yesterday, and my friend Rachel Pollack, she was one of the most important, tarot scholar of the 20th century. She wrote this book in the 80s called 78 Degrees of Wisdom, which is a book that is, like iconic. And I mean, to this day, like I think about her a lot. And but she was so funny and so smart, and such a, I don't know how to explain it. She was such a real generous personality. She had this gift, which I think I wish I could have. I'm a very verbose and convoluted person, but she had this great gift of imagination to kind of like either use, create connection that everyone will understood, or like simplify things with like of a great complexity. And she was extremely intelligent, and but she was also able to talk to everyone and explain them the mystery of that thing. And I think that I just, like, she was the Jedi, I'm like the Padawan. But like I think of her, like almost on a daily basis, on a weekly basis for sure. And I think, yeah, she gave me just being a friend for such a short amount of time too. Like I've known her since 2018, and she passed away 2 years ago. So really like very little time, and I feel like she freed me from so much just by showing me how she was in the world. So
Beautiful. You really articulated it well. I got a picture of her. I haven't even seen a picture of her, but I got a picture of what she did to you. Were you raised a particular religion?
yeah, I was Catholic. I mean, I'm still kind of Catholic, but
Do you pray?
yeah, I do every day.
And if God exists, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Well, I have this, after I die, I have this whole thing that this is my fantasy play. This is my fantasy play. When I die, I want my Virgil. I mean, I guess I want my Virgil. Like somehow someone picks you up in the waiting room of death and say, "Okay, I'm going to show you around." I would love that person to either be David Bowie or David Lynch. Uh,
That's good.
I want to, they don't bring me to God, necessarily, but I want them to show me around, and I want them to show me. I know that there is like an archive room in heaven,
Yeah.
or whatever, or like and then you can consult all the videos of all those time that you just like you need to consult. I think there is probably a great ballroom, and Prince is there, obviously.
That
And
is good.
and then there is this, for fun and kink, you have this great club called Hell, or the
You mean in heaven you have a club to dance and it's called
yeah,
hell? That's
exactly, the Hell, and then like Helvis, I guess, is there, and then God, if God shows up, right, like sometimes, or I mean, God never shows up because he's like, like he's just the mathematical formula, the algorithm. But Jesus comes and he says, like, yeah, and of course he's like, like a 70s comic book Jesus, and he's like smoking a joint. She's like, yep, lady, welcome. This is your home now. You meet anyone, like you can just go like the different level, upstairs, downstairs. If you have any question, there is like an officer. You'll get David Lynch's number. It will just get you in trouble. No.
yeah.
So I
I've
think
never had a better answer. 80% of people go, "What do you want God to say to you after you die?" They go, "You did a good job." It's like boring. I love your scenario is so beautiful. It reminds me of this great joke, and it could work for heaven or hell. The guy goes to hell, and the devil's standing there, and he peeks in and he sees they got tarot card readers. And he goes, "You have tarot card readers in hell?" And the devil goes, "That's all we got." And
wow,
then,
of course, because we know how to throw a party
right.
minds, because
But it could be the other way. It could be you go to heaven and you're peeking in St. Pete. You see tarot card readers. You go, "Do you have tarot card readers in heaven?" And they go, "That's all we got." So
I,
it's a,
I hope there is a little variety. I hope there is great cooks too, because
yeah,
they need to eat food.
yeah. I love it. Do evil people exist, or
Oh,
does
oh,
evil use people as a vehicle?
oh! Even that? No, no, no. I think people who are evil should have the, like, what's the term? Um, Accountability.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
there is no evil force.
yeah,
There is no good force either. Like you can use your critical sense, or whatever is good. If you don't have, do you have empathy? Is it
yeah.
what you're doing going to make someone days worse? I mean, I'm sure I've been upsetting. I know I'm an upsetting person, so I'm not gonna pretend that I'm just like all nice and stuff. But I think people are, some people are. I don't know if evil is such a loaded Christian word. It's just like I feel people have selfish intentions, or intentions that are cruel, and
Yeah, well,
that's not being, it's not like a darker force coming to you that's just like, oh, the devil made me do it. No, you're just an asshole. And then when the retribution will come, maybe you learn something, like
yeah, because you anticipated the next question beautifully. How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai: keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
yeah.
JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I think, what does that mean, acknowledging?
Yeah.
I'm sure I have tons of enemies, I just like, I acknowledge, people who I know don't like me, but are they gonna, am I gonna feel, stopped by their judgment? Like I've judged people before. I know, like, it came from my insecurities, or, like parts of myself that I worked on, and like I can see them, have compassion for them. I also just know that, as we said right at the beginning of this, I only have one life, and I don't think my work is neither better nor worse than anyone. I'm just gonna do it, and then if people have like shit that they want to, they just talk among themselves, and I'm just gonna do my stuff.
Yeah, that's good, because that it really follows up with Nassim Taleb said games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In
Ex-
real life, we don't know who wins or loses, but we can tell who a hero is. And
yeah,
Gregory Bateson, the anthropologist, says if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he go, I did something morally and socially wrong?
yeah.
So again, it's a lot of prompts. You can go wherever you want, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
I don't think punishment works. I
Yeah.
think, I think, it's just like I think people like punish. I mean, I don't know. Like punishing people are people who've been punished and who just like take like from that arm that it was done. I mean, maybe I'm just like it's like I'm just being a bag of like commonalities, I guess. But it's just like I don't know if punishment works. It's also like a case by case. What I
Yeah.
know is this. What I know is this is that there is a lot that there is a lot we learn from failure. And
Yes.
and if something that New Yorker taught me that Parisian never managed to teach me is like we're talking about the enemy stuff. Like Parisians are very um they're very afraid of judgment. They're very afraid of so like they're very critical of everything and everyone and very pompous about it. But like they never do anything. They never get creative. There is very like very very little entrepreneurship or just because people are raised with the idea that if you do something people are going to just judge you for it. And then I came to New York like in I think 14 years. New Yorkers cured me from this.
Yeah.
uh, like because New Yorkers are just used to do all sorts of shit all the time, and then they know that whatever you throw on the wall is not necessarily going to stick, and so they
Yeah.
will never judge anyone who is trying to create something. And in general, when you ask a New Yorker like, "Oh, I want to do this," they will be like, "Oh, that's so fucking great. Do you want some help? How can I
Yeah.
help you?" And they'll
Yeah.
just. And so I feel like this, I feel like the like I don't believe in punishment, but I do believe in the power of failure. I believe that
Beautiful.
failing is this thing where it's just like you can judge yourself, you can punish yourself for it, but the reality is like it won't make you more creative or like it won't make you progress. And so punishing, I don't know, I don't know if it will just be like I think that learning how to fail, learning how to fall is the way you can just move forward without necessarily like with learning non-judgment.
I have a great example that this is the main thing McLuhan learned from Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, and it applies to Iggy Pop. He said, my band was so bad imitating the Rolling Stones, we invented punk rock. So it's basically, how do you turn a breakdown into a breakthrough? How do you turn a rejection into a redirection? You know,
Yeah. Well,
it's redemption. Yeah.
and it's just like I personally I don't like punk music. Like it's never there was never my sensibility music wise, but I do believe that I've been raised by not by my parents, but like culturally speaking, I've
Yeah.
been raised by people, and like in all the different little like sub levels of counterculture I frequented when I was in France and in Germany and even in New York. I do believe there is like the punk ethos is the source of everything I do, and there's the idea that the do it yourself is
Yeah.
like
Do it yourself.
do it yourself. Like if it doesn't exist, do it. Do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the biggest thing. It doesn't have to be, but just like take
And
whatever
it's
you
like
have, go see and do
it's
meet
right.
people.
It's like you said about New Yorkers. You want to do that? How can I help you?
Exactly.
It's like, let's join in. So James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He
Uh-huh.
basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go into a building and see a movie of a tree when I can
Yeah.
go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Because of poetic license, because it's like that. It's that thing. You remember there, Oscar Wilde wrote that book, which I love. I can't remember how it's called in English. I think it's called like In Praise of Lying.
Yeah.
And he says like, oh yeah, Monet invented London. Monet invented London because before Monet, no one could basically appreciate the fog. So the moment Monet just paint the Parliament in the fog with this bluish thing, people were just like, "Oh my God, it's beautiful!" And then it
Yeah.
just like it became this revelation where this kind of like the mystery of like London, the foggy London, became real.
Yeah.
I believe this. I believe artists are capable of doing this. They are
Yeah.
capable. It's like the antenna stuff. It's not.
Yeah.
They're showing us reality. That's why like that's why everyone is a. It's like this thing, that if you give like a little, like a little disposable camera to like 10 kids, they're all going to take different pictures of the same
Oh
thing.
yeah.
And you're going to be able to see their personality, like people do that now for weddings, like they just give cameras to their table. And it's just such a fun way to actually, well, realize that like people see different things. It's the same event, it's the same, it's the same tree, but like when it's painted by, I don't know, Otto Dix, it's going to mean something very, very deep and specific. If it's painted by Renoir, like it's just going
Yeah.
to be. So I believe in that. I believe I like the idea. There is what was the name of that film? There is okay, I'm just gonna go. I know you did a little bit of like experimental cinema, and so you're aware of this. There is this great film by Stan Brakhage, the experimental filmmaker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Called I talk about this all the time. It's called The Act of Seeing with One's Own Eye.
Yes.
And it's a movie about autopsy, and the title, which I think is just so fucking amazing, is basically his translation of the word autopsy, the idea. And it's just, this is what artists give us, allow us to do. We can see the world through their eyes.
Yeah.
And because of it, we like, it changes us, it changes the way we see the world in general. I found that just really, really special.
That's beautiful.
The color red will never be the same because of David Lynch. Like, now I'm like, I'll only live in red rooms forever.
You're really articulate. I love how you brought up Brakhage. That's cool. And so that's you've talked about the tipping point where you got into tarot cards in your other YouTube videos. So I want to go back into tarot cards now, but first, what was the tipping point for you to pursue art history? Because that came before tarot cards, right? Were you in high school? Like, what are you doing? Are you making art or going to museums and you go, oh, that's what I want to do. That's my calling. When did you have a tipping point where your calling was going to be art history?
Well, it's just I did so many things. So like I wanted to be a makeup artist for horror movies because that's what I wanted.
Oh, that was your first aspiration?
Yeah, I wanted to do prosthetic. I wanted to do practical effects. I was fascinated by like all this like mask making and stuff. And so I did a semester of that, and then I hated it so much that I stopped, and I enrolled in university in the fine art department because I thought, well, I'm just going to do like art. And I did that for 1 year, and then I was like, like the only thing that I really, really enjoy is the art history part. And I think I've always been interested in history in general and art history, obviously. But I thought there was something about like it was about understanding images beyond just the historical aspect. And a lot of the work I've been interested in working at the beginning. I've always been interested in religious painting, and as a Catholic, we're told that the image is like a presence, like it is an icon, like it means that there is the Virgin Mary or Christ is here, and we're very, that there is this idea that image can be a symbolic substitute for the presence of the divine. And I was just really amazed by that. I was amazed by that, and I was amazed about how artists again and again and again are just basically painting the three same topics, crucifixion, like virgin and child, and et cetera, et cetera. It's just like the 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 level of creativity, the level of human invention that went into this painting was just really insane. Like the entire fields of like, like I mean, I'm just thinking about the Mantegna Christ. Just like, oh my god, let's use perspective to kind of depict the dead body of Christ. It's just like, what a fucking extraordinary painting. Like it
That
is.
is amazing. But let me just go back for a second. Did your parents take you to art museums and art galleries growing up? Because evidently they're taking you to church, and you're appreciating religious iconography in the church. But
Yeah.
where did you find that crossover to like art museums in the making of art? Were you forming an aesthetic in art by going to art museums or looking at art books?
No, well, I mean, I was looking at books, but like I grew up in the suburbs of Paris. So like we did, like I was in a Catholic school, but we did all sorts of like, like day off, like I was going to museum with my school a lot.
I
Uh,
see.
we went to like archaeological museum, went to
Yeah,
medical museum, which I liked very much. We did some, local shows. We went to theater as well. My parents were not interested in art at all, and it's just that there is this thing, it's a matter of I don't. They never thought it was for them. Although my mom, really had like specific painting that she felt very close to, and and so like basically my revenge was the internet. I got internet when I was 15, so suddenly I had access to everything, and it was a fucking
I
blast.
see.
Music, art. So I was just like digging for weird stuff, and
Right.
and those were good times. And then the moment I was like, the moment I managed to, like pretend I would pretend to go to the mall with my friends, and I would basically my mom would drop me at the mall, and I will take the subway from the mall, and then just go and like just hang out in Paris during the afternoon and go to galleries and museums. And I
Wow.
did my formal education just by, like going to like I was so uh hungry for that stuff, that at the moment I had access at 15. I absorbed
Well,
all of
you described your whole progress in getting into tarot cards and other YouTube, so I don't want to repeat it, but it's really intriguing how you saw at this like secondhand store or some sort of store that little pack of tarot cards. I loved how you described that. But here's the question there. A screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker.
Mhm.
Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process as a tarot card reader?
Well, the thing is, it depends what I, like in what context I'm reading the cards. But like I think what's interesting is that the the card the card are trying to define to some extent the intention of the person who's, you know
Yeah,
inquirent. And I feel like that it's interesting. It's almost like very often, like tarot scholar will describe the tarot as a mirror, as a reflecting, a projective or reflecting surface. And it's true. Like I think what I can, it's almost like it's a scrying device. So like the cards are here and they are showing me information about the person in front of me. And it's almost like, if I was to say like, oh, like just like, can you do this? You have a little piece of salad in between your teeth. She's like, can you do this? Like, there is a hair
right.
between your teeth. And so I can get in touch with this. I can tell them, like you like on the surface you think this way, but like it seems that there is something else here. And then we talk about it. The tarot is interesting because it's it sparks conversation, and those conversations sometimes are as important as the reading itself. So
Yeah,
like it's a proactive, art for, it's like theater, impro theater with like, but the card are the directors, they're the one just like making the story as we read the cards. So
yeah. That's really good because It leads right into what I want to go into. But one more question in that regard. McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. So knife and fork extends our teeth. Shutter in a camera extends our eyelid. And even say non-tangible, say religion or philosophy might extend consciousness. What does the tarot card extend for you? What humanness?
I mean, it's just, it will sound so cliche if I say the soul, but I think it's just like I guess I'm gonna misuse, I'm sure, like like a psychoanalytic term, but I think it's an extension of the psyche.
Yeah,
Like how they, to like develop photography, they put it in this kind of like revelation bath, and then you put the photo, and then the picture slowly appear.
yeah,
The liquid, that's the tarot. The tarot slowly reveal the image that has been hidden. It's been there all the time, but it was
yeah.
hidden, and now we can see it. That's the way it works.
That is heavy. It's the photochemical liquid that develops the paint, the
Yeah,
photo, because that's, photography etymologically is painting with light.
yeah, yeah,
And you
yeah.
said, oh, it sounds so cliche, extends the soul. No, I mean, that's what extending your light, your soul.
Uh-huh.
So that's like Milan Kundera, he wrote that book, Unbearable Likeness of Being.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's why I love writing, because the character I'm writing about can go further than I can. It's
yeah,
like, yeah, right. If I take a pen and write a character on a piece of paper, how can that character go further than I can? And I mean, is that what you're talking about? You're sort of guiding them to see how their character goes further than
well,
what's
the thing is, this is what I've talked about that. So I'm sorry for people who were watching this and then thinking like I'm like a tagliner. We only just say taglines. I think it's just I think the tarot is here to tell a story, but that story doesn't have to be the truth to be efficient or important. And I think, like the way I relate it is like when you watch a movie, that sometimes you watch a film and that film change everything for you.
yeah,
It just shape the way you think of yourself, of your society, of everything. The film is fiction, so it's a lie. All of it is a lie. But like you go, like you consent to empathize with that lie for a moment, in that the empathize with that simulacrum, and the change that it does within you are very real. It dislodge something. The tarot is the same process. Like it is a simulacrum of a story, except that in that story you're the hero. It's like those 80s little book with dragons and stuff. You're the hero in the middle of that story. And so if I'm telling you, um you're not going to get that job, like maybe you're going to be pissed at me because, that's not what you want to hear.
right.
But if like that strong emotion, oh, like that bitch Letty, like she told me I was not gonna, well, I'm gonna prove her wrong, and it actually push you to kind of like try to
Yeah,
double down to get that job, or figure out, well, like I'm not concerned about being right. I'm concerned
yeah,
about helping you get what you want.
yeah,
And sometimes the tarot pushes me to say stuff that are ambiguous, outrageous, because those are the things that will help you get the thought process that
yeah.
is needed for your course of action. And it's a very interesting it's a very interesting practice. I think it's interesting if you enjoy human nature, because you
Yeah.
learn a lot about how wonderfully weird and moving humans are.
It's amazing because the musician I had on my podcast last week, I said, "What's the best thing for a human being?" He says, "To be human," and that's it. Your joy and enthusiasm in exploring and understanding the human condition is contagious. It's really been fun. And even though our 90 minutes is up, I'd love to propose doing a part two so we could get a lot deeper into tarot cards,
Yeah,
into truth, into film,
yeah,
and maybe we could close out this part one. It was really been fun. And, I wanted to tell you what you were talking about is remind me of Jean-Luc Godard saying, Hollywood films are just documentaries of actors acting.
Yeah.
So, all films are, I mean, that's really funny because all films are not true, but we want to believe films are true. And it goes back to that great William Faulkner line. Sometimes journalism is more true.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes fiction is more true than journalism. Sometimes a fiction film is more true than nonfiction,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, it's
and
just that's the thing. It's like, and that's the thing. And not to go back to Kenneth Anger, but Kenneth Anger was a big, like amateur of like silent films, and he believed that was the true magic of cinema, was like non-speaking film.
yeah,
And I want to say, like he's absolutely right. He was absolutely right on this. He was absolutely right. I think there is the tarot function the same. Like for us viewer, it's hard, like we're used to watch, Scorsese movies and stuff, but it's hard to watch those films because we're not moved by them the same way they moved people in the, like late 19th century. And tarot is the same, like it's this group of characters that are kind of like moving on those cards slowly, and their language is something that has been forgotten. And like you as a tarot reader, you just like watching them, and then you have to understand what they're documenting as actors documenting something. I found it very interesting, and
yeah. It
very rich.
reminds me of Buster Keaton.
Yeah.
He turned a stumble into a dance.
Yeah.
In the silent film era, he was mainly silent film, and he could, change that and say, "Oh, I'm going to fall, but it's actually going to turn into a dance."
I
And that,
just Yeah, I had such a crush on him for the longest time.
oh
Like
yeah.
he's my favorite. I found him just
Well,
incredible.
if have you ever seen the film he made called Film? Samuel Beckett made it a film.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing this. It's like when
It's
he was old too. And then there
It's
was
30 minutes long, but the thing you have to see is a documentary by Ross Lippman,
uh-huh.
featured a 90-minute on the making of film.
Oh, I want to see this.
It's called Not Film, and
No.
it talks. It's mainly about Beckett, but they go into Keaton making the film, and it's really an amazing, intriguing, really deep dive. So why don't we close out this part one with one question, and
Yeah.
it could grow into part two easily.
Yeah.
Is what's the difference between science and art?
Well, you're finishing with like a well, I think, okay. This is a hard one. Well, so, I don't know. Like I think that it'll be so easy to say like science is about, left brain, and like art is about left brain. But I don't believe it's true. I believe that both of them are similar in the fact that you need imagination to be able to perceive that blueprint of God that I talked about. You need imagination. I think that art is less preoccupied by formulas. Like how do you call that? Uh, well, I guess like art is science with emotion. You know,
Yeah,
like if you were just like in that like binary that you had, like thinking and feeling. I think that art is preoccupied by emotion, and science is preoccupied about thinking and understanding logics.
yeah.
Um, I also think that some of the best uh, scientists were artists. Like
Oh,
yeah, like there's like
some of the best artists are scientists. I mean, I don't mean to make false binaries, but when I ask, is it more this or more that? You'll love this. One woman, I says, is it more this or more that? And she goes, the word more doesn't function in your question.
yeah. I mean, unless it's followed by is more, like for
Yeah,
me more, and that's like this thing. But I just like that's the thing I found really fascinating. I'm interested in science. I'm interested in the development of like science in the like 18th, 19th, 20th century, and how like basically with the Enlightenment, all those things that used to be alchemy or became like concrete domain of science. And it's just I found that there was a moment where art and science were in tandem. Like
Yeah.
To be able to teach science, you needed artists, and so like there was no, they were not facing in some kind of like like box fighting, like it's
Right.
either or the other. They were really walking hand in hand, and I think that I have almost like a nostalgia, I think, from that time where science was like a practice of superbness, like. And then you go to scientific museum in Paris, like a anatomical museum and stuff, like like they were just understanding that beauty was a tool for teaching, and that unless you move people into trying to understand things from an allegorical lens, or from like the taxidermy is just about that too. Taxidermy is like a complicated subject, but it was like the intent of it was to just preserve the beauty and the grace of the animal, so you could imagine it moving in the world, even though like that panther was not reachable for you at all. I think art and science are, in my head, they're holding hands like friends.
They are. See, what it really is my series is about me and you versus the wording on the questions.
Yeah.
So I'm for the person suggesting there's a different way to word your question, and I want to expand on it, because I probably could say better, is there a difference between art and science? But then they can just go yes or no. So I'm just sort of using words as prompts, and I'm always open, because I know how close they are connected, just like feeling and thought. You can't separate them, but we think we can because we invented the words. And you did exactly what people say. Well, science is more heady thinking, art is more emotional feeling. But here's Jean Cocteau. Jean Cocteau said, art is science made clear.
Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna do a little like aparté here, just say like a little. Jean Cocteau was like a person who had very strong initiated tendencies, and so people believe he was maybe like a Freemason, or like he was just like, if you see that mural he did for the church in London, like there is a lot to be said about that. There is a very strong esoteric component in his work, and all his fascination for Orpheus was really linked to that. And I feel like I was just thinking about this as you were talking. It's like there is in the history there was a link between art and science until the 17th century, and that link was alchemy. Alchemy was like this discipline that merged both, and alchemy was like part of the idea surrounding the alchemical process was that you're working on the material, but the working on the material is also changing you, and so you're part of the experiment. You yourself, your psyche, your emotion, everything will be part of the experiment. You're not an observer or a master. You're just like, you're part of the cocktail. And
that's amazing. That's because I want to tell you that we can close off, but it will never close out, because these.
I know every week, Jerry. I wanted to. This was the most fun I had in a long time. I'm not.
Yeah, it keeps steamrolling, but bringing up alchemy is what I always talk about, because you brought up Zappa. Is Frank Zappa and Preston Sturges were both alchemists. What they did was take tertium quid. They took two known things and put them together and created a third new unknown thing. Yeah. Now, they might not consciously going, I'm an alchemist, I'm going to create this. They're just artists playing around and having fun. So Frank took theater and he took rock and he blended them, and he kind of invented theatrical rock. And Preston Sturges took comedy, slapstick kind of comedy, and sophisticated writing of and directing films called Screwball Comedies and kind of invented screwball comedies. And he did it really well. But then both of them satirized their own new invention. So that's where you taught me something so heavy, is that's they weren't observers, they were being changed themselves.
Yeah.
They were so part of what they were doing. You know what it is? It's like that great quote, how do you separate the dance from the dancer? You know, they're like one thing, you know.
It's true. It's true. I can't wait for our next conversation. I'm also like I really enjoy Frank Zappa. So I want, like, next time maybe I'll take the liberty of asking you all sorts of questions about him and his work, because I think for me he inspired the carnivalesque, you know, just like
Carnivalesque is really a good way to put it.
this like savant lawlessness, you know, in art making. And I, you know, like I didn't call him as my special favorite person because I preferred Rachel for this question, but like he's part there. He's in there in my pantheon of some of the greatest artists.
Yeah.
Walk this
Well, what album did you start with?
Oh, I can't remember. I just have, I have this one that I used to listen to all the time. It's Alive and Captain Beefheart, isn't it? And
it's
they play
probably Bongo Fury.
That's Bongo Fury. Yes, that's the one. That's the one. And then, but there is this like version. It's like Carolina Hardcore Ecstasy. It's like that song cracked me up so much, and I just like the lyrics are so bizarre, but the music is so amazing, and I like it was such an earworm for me for a long time. So
that's amazing.
And there was what's the name? It's like Hot Rats.
Hot Rats is another great album. Hot Rats is really the invention of jazz rock fusion, and it's also another thing that Frank invented doing that alchemy was he invented chamber rock.
Yeah.
Because basically it's classical music played with a rock band.
Yeah.
So he's not just enhancing, you know, like Moody Blues would have, you know, strings back their rock music. Frank made a rock band sound like an orchestra. Yeah. So he was always transforming. But Carolina Hardcore Ecstasy, I got to tell you, the lead singer on that, Napoleon Murphy Brock, was on my podcast a couple months ago, and he's an amazing guy. He's like still singing Zappa really well in so many settings. He plays with a band called Stinkfoot Orchestra, and he's just such a strong. And there's one question I want to ask you about tarot card reading, and I could ask you it now, but if you do you got to go?
I have to go very soon, but we can.
No, let's hold it for
next time. Yeah.
But it was such a pleasure, and I really appreciate your time and energy. You taught me so much, and the main thing was it was fun.
Fun. I know. Thank you so much, Sherry. This really was the best part of my day. Thank you again for the great conversation, and I'll see you whenever you want. We'll do it.
We'll plan it again, and even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we keep talking forever and ever.
With great pleasure.
Thank you so much.